So if my paper were to write about why cycling is the best sport in the world, instead of writing about
I agree with you, but go ahead.
right, and I can, if I said they would agree, you would cringe, but instead of trying to prove that cycling is the best sport in the world, I would just...
You would have to find one sport that's better. And you could disprove the proposition.
Disprove it, okay.
Right. But to come to me and say, well, I found a whole lot of people that agree with me and like cycling, you haven't done anything. Except find a bunch of people who happen to like cycling. But if you could find 10 people who tell you that that's not the best sport in the world, but
then how would I prove
that cage wrestling or whatever those ridiculous fighting programs are on TV.
I like that too.
Whoever says that, all you have to do is find one person that says that that's the best sport, and immediately you disprove the proposition. Right? So these are really important things for you to keep in mind.
When you say that you found support for...
I don't say that, or I try not to.
But for the alternate hypothesis, or can you not say that either? So the alternate hypothesis is usually what you're expecting will win out.
Usually we write things, we state the null hypothesis as that which we believe to be true, but hope isn't, so that we can reject the null in favor of the alternate.
So you would either say you found support to reject the null.
But the problem with...
For example, suppose I had given you data, and I deliberately didn't, but suppose I had given you data on quantities of wine consumed and the price of a liter of wine. And everything is restated to adjust for quality and alcohol content and so on and so forth. And I had stated my null hypothesis. So I've been an economist for many years. Am I going to state that the null hypothesis is that the regression coefficient on price is at 0? Or am I going to state that the null hypothesis is that the coefficient on price is negative? Which is going to be my null hypothesis?
You think you would want to state your null so that it's 0?
Yeah, I'm going to state the null to be 0 so that I can reject it in favor of the alternate. But the problem is that my alternate is very nonspecific. It could be that I've stated the alternate as a two-sided test. That is, the coefficient on P is not 0. And what did I gain by that? Not much. I could have written the alternate as the coefficient on P is less than 0. And then I would have to move the critical point accordingly, given that I'm only interested in one tail of distribution. But I would be rejecting the null, which is something that I believe to be true, that price has nothing to do with quantity, so that I can reject that in favor of something that I like better. Okay, so we state the null as that which we believe to be true, but hope isn't. So we can reject it in favor of the alternate. There are still problems with that, again, because the alternate hypothesis is very nonspecific. There's a whole heck of a lot of distribution that lies below 0. Okay. So that's basically what I wanted you to get out of the thing that I had to do last week, namely that there can be an infinity of structural models, all of which are consistent with the data. And you can't discriminate between all of those structural models. So that one paper that I showed you that I told you that I thought was the most intellectually challenging paper I've written, the one with George Lady, is all about that. That sometimes the data cannot distinguish between alternate structural models. It just can't. And sometimes there is no version of the structural model that's consistent with the observed data. Sometimes that happens. How many of you read the biography of Einstein that came out, I guess last year or the year before? Anybody? Nobody has time? There was a biography of Einstein that came out last year or the year before. And of course, one of the things for which Einstein is known is that he got really worked up about whether or not light was waves or particles. And that was part of the debate that had plagued physics for many years. And so two British guys, Morley and I can't remember the other guy's name, figured they'd conduct a little experiment so that they could settle the issue once and for all. What they were going to do was shine a light beam across a big lake onto mirrors and reflect it back to where they started. And if light was a wave, and of course the reason that there was this debate about whether or not light was a wave or a particle was because of things like the two-slit experiment. If you shine light through two slits, you get one pattern on the other side of the paper. If you cover one of the slits, you get a different scatter, as though it's if you shine it through the two slits, it looks like it's a wave, but if you shine it through one slit, it looks like it's a particle. And so that's an experiment that everybody does in high school, and it's part of classical physics, is this anomaly. So Michelson and Morley thought that they could settle the issue once and for all by measuring the speed of light as they shined it across and back the lake, and measuring its speed. And if light was a wave, then the wave that had to travel with the rotation of the Earth should have a different speed than the light beam that traveled at right angles to the rotation of the Earth, because of the way waves propagate. And they came up with a result, and they reported their results, and Einstein said that this is nonsense, because your experiment is consistent with both the particle theory and the wave theory of light. And he was right. So that's part of the message that we're supposed to get from the whole one yesterday. Sometimes you can't design an experiment that enables us to distinguish between the theoretical models. We can reject a model sometimes, but not always. So you got to keep that in mind as you write your research papers. I'll switch to my computer here.
So if you're writing a conclusion, kind of getting back to my previous question, you can either reject the null or fail to reject the null, basically, right? So you find...
We're going great. Until at the very end you screwed it up. You can either reject the null or fail to reject the null. That is, accept it. You add it at the end. If you had just stopped at the end of fail to reject it, it would have been perfect.
Well, I never said the word accept.
Didn't he say the word accept at the very tail end of it?
No,
E-X-C-E-P-T or A-C-C? There was a word at the end of that sentence. It sounded awfully like A-C-C-E-P-T.
I was going to say something else, but I stopped short. I was going to say finding support. Would you say you found support to...
Expunge. Oh, you found support to reject something? I would never phrase it that way, but
okay.
You could.
Well, before, I'm just asking because before you said don't ever write, but you find support for a null. So
yeah,
I was trying to fit in the word.
I don't like the word support or find support. Expunge those two words from your vocabulary.
Okay.
Okay.
So how would you
express it? I reject the null. Okay. Period. Full stop. It communicates to everybody exactly what you meant. I reject the null.
Or you could say you can't reject the null.
Yeah.
You can say retain the null. Fail reject the thing is retain.
I don't even want to go down the slippery slope.
You want to right.
Yeah. Let's not go down the slippery slope.
Yeah,
Let's draw the line in the sand, and we're not going to go across it. Okay. Otherwise, we get into this endless debate. Like one of the things that's popped up in the news yesterday or the day before is when does life start? All of a sudden, we now have Joe Biden telling us that he's now rethought things and life starts at the moment of conception. But you talk to somebody else, and they say, well, life doesn't start until the fetus can sustain life outside the womb. You know, it's a long slippery slope down there.